On the fourth Thursday of every November, we have Thanksgiving here in the United States, and every Thanksgiving for almost the last 100 years, there has been the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. When I think about the parade, the first thing that comes to mind is always the giant balloons. But did you know the balloons weren't always a part of the parade? From 1924 to 1926, the big draw of the parade was actually animals that had been borrowed from the Central Park Zoo. They'd forced these animals to walk 6 miles, which meant that by the end of the parade, a lot of these animals were not so easy to control, which wouldn't be that big of a deal if, let's say, maybe you were borrowing some zebras. But those aren't the kind of animals that were being borrowed from the zoo back in the early 1920s. During those first few years of the parade, the animals that were borrowed from the Central Park Zoo were donkeys, camels, elephants, bears, and tigers. Needless to say, they couldn't keep that up, because believe it or not, kids kind of thought that they were scary. And so after an in-between year where they just did giant papier-mâché heads in 1927, in 1928, they introduced a long-term solution: giant helium-filled balloons. And since then, giant balloons and Macy's have gone together like mashed potatoes and gravy. Over the years of the parade, there have been a ton of different balloons, with some coming and going, and so I thought it would be fun to take a look at the entire history of the giant balloons that have been featured in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and the Christmas Parade when it was still called that. I do want to specify for all those big balloon heads out there, because I know that there's going to be some people who will care about this. We're just talking about the giant balloons. Not interested in anything that's classified as a novelty balloon, a category of balloons that was introduced in 1985. Also not going to be interested in float balloons. So if it's attached to a float, also not going to be on this list today. If there's interest, I'm happy to go back and take a look at those in a future video. But as for today, to keep this even the slightest bit manageable, we're just going to talk about giant balloons. And so my question to you is, are you ready to take a needlessly in-depth look at the history of the giant balloons that have been featured in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade from 1928 until 2024? I know I am, so let's get started. 1928 saw us introduced to Big Turk, Wobblehead, Goldfish, Sky Tiger, Giantess, Hummingbird, Early Bird, and Sky Elephant. 1928 was the first year to feature balloons, so all of the designs were brand new. The man behind the design and ideas for the balloons was Tony Frederick Sarg, who had experience in working with marionettes, so he kind of just designed the balloons to be like upside down versions of the puppets. Starting in 1928 and going all the way until 1980, the balloons were created by the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. In 1929, the new balloons that were introduced were Horse and Rider, Lapdog, Terrible Turk, the Her Inspector, Gobble the Turkey, Old Man Dragon, which still holds the record as the longest balloon ever to be featured in the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade at 178 feet, and the Cats and Jammer Kids, which would serve as the first time that an established character would be used as a balloon at the parade, a tradition that would be continued almost exclusively as years would go by. The Cats and Bird Kids would not only be the first licensed characters to be featured in the parade, but would also start a new tradition of being the first balloon to hit something, completely deflate, and have to be removed from the parade. Now, almost every year, something bad happens to at least one of the balloons, so unless it's something that's really eventful, I'm not going to mention all of them here. As we make our way into 1930, the new balloons that would be introduced were Joe Jinks, Our Boarding House, Tunerville Folks, The Goops, and my personal favorite, based off a comic strip of the same name, Boob McNutt. In 1930 would start a new tradition with having balloons from the year before return with the Cats and Jammer Kids. 1931 would see the introduction of Hippopotamus, Tomcat, Cat, Two-Headed Giant, and Tiamat the Dragon. At the end of the parade, both Cat and Tiamat the Dragon would be released, but they didn't want to lose the balloons, so they did catch them with an airplane, which is awesome when it works, like with Tiamat the Dragon. But with Cat, things didn't go as smoothly, and the balloon actually got caught in a telephone wire, which caused it to catch on fire, which, objectively, is a very exciting way to end the parade. This year, the only returning balloon was Terrible Turk. In 1932, the parade would be broadcast over local radio for the first time, and would also introduce the new balloons: Fritz the Dachshund, Jerry the Pig, Felix the Cat, Willie Redbird, Andy the Alligator, and George the Giant Drum Major. The returning balloons this year would be Terrible Turk and Tomcat. You would think that fire being caused by releasing the balloons the year before would stop them from maybe doing that again, But this year when they released the Tomcat balloon and an airplane tried to catch it, the balloon would get hooked to the plane and send the plane into a tailspin. 1933 saw the introduction of the new balloons Tom the Cat, Gulliver the Gullible, the Colic Kid, the Rabbit, and Elephant, with returning balloons being Fritz the Dachshund, Jerry the Pig, Felix the Cat, and Andy the Alligator. 1934 would be the first year that Disney would step into the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with the introduction of Mickey Mouse, Practical Pig, the Three Little Pigs, the Big Bad Wolf, Horace Horsecollar, and this nightmare version of Pluto. This year would also see the introduction of Eddie Cantor into the parade. The returning balloons this year would be the Colicky Kid and Elephant. 1935 does a good job of showing us how much some of the things that they would do in the parade back then wouldn't fly today, with the giant balloon titled simply Indian. The first version of Donald Duck would be introduced, as well as another balloon called Turkey, the Happiest Dog, and then Harpo Marx. The returning balloons this year would be Mickey Mouse, Practical Pig, Pluto, Horace Horsecollar, and the Big Bad Wolf. 1936 would honestly see some pretty cool introductions with Morton the Nantucket Sea Monster, Two-Headed Pirate, and Father Knickerbocker. The two returning balloons this year would be Indian and Turkey. 1937 would introduce us to the balloons Officer SOS 13, the Man on the Flying Trapeze, the Christmas Stocking, and this very disturbing version of Pinocchio. This year we would also see an updated version of Morton the Nantucket Sea Monster, who went from the color green to the color red. 1938 would introduce Uncle Sam, Little Man, Big Man, which was actually designed by a kid, and Ferdinand the Bull, with returning balloons, Christmas Stocking, and Pinocchio. 1939 would serve as a milestone year for the parade by being the first year that the parade was locally televised. This year would introduce two new balloons, the Tin Man and Santa Claus, with returning balloons, Pinocchio, Uncle Sam, and Little Man, Big Man. 1940 is going to introduce Hippopotamus, Clarence the Clown, and Superman, with Uncle Sam and Santa Claus returning. 1941 introduces a new elephant, Goldfish, Sea Serpent, and Hugo the Football Hero, with returning balloons Santa Claus, Hippopotamus, Clarence the Clown, and Superman. Now, from the years 1942 to 1944, the Macy's Parade did not happen because of World War II. So it wouldn't be until 1945 that we would be introduced to some new balloons, with the Triple Scoop Ice Cream Cone, Old Man Pumpkin, Bobo the Hobo, the Young Man in the Flying Trapeze, and Teddy Bear. 1946 would introduce Pilgrim, Panda Bear, the Baseball Player, and Candy Cane, with the Triple Scoop Ice Cream Cone being the only returning balloon. 1947 would introduce us to the Comical Cop, the Pirate, and the Gnome, as well as featuring the return of Old Man Pumpkin, Young Man on the Flying Trapeze, and Panda Bear. Now, up until this point, the parade had been very popular in New York, but it had not really become known to everybody in the country. That was until it was featured in the 1947 classic movie Miracle on 34th Street. Its new popularity would lead to its first national television broadcast in 1948, with the introduction of Monkey on the High Trapeze, the Crocodile, and the Fireman, with returning balloons, Candy Cane, the Pirate, the Gnome. 1949 gave us Dachshund, Howdy Doody on the Flying Trapeze, and Hobo Clown, with returning balloons Teddy Bear, the Gnome, and the Crocodile. 1950 gave us two new balloons, Toy Soldier and Rainbow Trout, with the returning balloons the Gnome, the Crocodile, Dachshund, and Hobo Clown rounding out the parade. 1951 gave us only one new balloon with Mighty Mouse, but he was joined by returning balloons the Gnome, Dachshund, Hobo Clown, Toy Soldier, and Rainbow Trout. 1952 gave us Spaceman, with returning balloons Teddy Bear, the Crocodile, Rainbow Trout, and Mighty Mouse. 1953 would introduce the, in my opinion, downgraded version of the Dachshund, a new version of Hobo Clown, and a new version of Goldfish, this time with pinkish fins. The returning balloons this year would be the Crocodile, Toy Soldier, Mighty Mouse, and Spaceman. This year would serve as the first year that the parade would be nationally televised on the network NBC. And from that day forward, that's where you could always find the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. 1954 saw us introduced to the Gorgeous Gobbler, with returning balloons Toy Soldier, Mighty Mouse, Spaceman, Dachshund, and Goldfish with pinkish fins. 1955 would actually see no new balloons introduced, but the returning lineup would be Mighty Mouse, Spaceman, Dachshund, and Gorgeous Gobbler. 1956 would see only one balloon being introduced, which was Observer, and it would be joined by only 2 additional balloons with Mighty Mouse and Gorgeous Gobbler coming in again. 1957 would introduce us to Popeye, with returning balloons Toy Soldier, Spaceman, Gorgeous Gobbler, and Observer. 1958 was an interesting year for the parade because there was a national helium shortage, which meant that the balloons weren't floated but were instead carried by cranes, which would explain the limited number of balloons this year, because some of the balloons were actually too heavy to be carried by the cranes. For instance, the Gorgeous Gobbler. This year would see only 3 balloons, Toy Soldier, Spaceman, and Popeye. 1959 also sees no new balloons introduced, with this year's returning balloons being Spaceman, Gorgeous Gobbler, and Popeye. In 1960, we'd be introduced to Happy Dragon, which does hold the record for the #1 balloon to be featured in the most parades, with 23 separate appearances. It would be joined by the Gorgeous Gobbler, the Observer, and Popeye. 1961 would introduce Bullwinkle Moose to the parade, which holds 2 separate records. It shares the record with Happy Dragon for being the balloon to have the most appearances in the parade, with 23, but Bullwinkle is also the 3rd most featured character over multiple designs, with 26 parade entries. 1961 would see Bullwinkle joined by the Gorgeous Gobbler, the Observer, Popeye, and the Happy Dragon. 1962 would see the introduction of the Flying Trapeze, as well as an upgraded version of Donald Duck, a big improvement in my opinion. The returning balloons this year would be Popeye, Happy Dragon, and Bullwinkle Moose. 1963 would see the introduction of Elsie the Cow and Dino the Dinosaur from Sinclair Oil. This dino is tied as the 4th most featured character to be featured in the parade. At 24 parade appearances, the returning balloons this year would be Popeye, the Happy Dragon, Bullwinkle Moose, and Donald Duck. 1964 gives us Linus the Lionhearted, which holds 3rd place for longest running balloon, with 21 parade appearances, and he would be joined by returning balloons Popeye, Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, and Elsie the Cow. 1965 would see an updated version of Elsie the Cow, as well as the introduction of Underdog, who holds the record as the 4th longest running single balloon with 20 separate parades. They would be joined by returning balloons Popeye, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, and Linus the Lionhearted. 1966 gives us a 2nd version of Superman, as well as the first inclusion of Smokey Bear. This balloon would go on to be the 5th place longest running balloon in the history of the parade, with 17 separate parade appearances. The returning balloons this year would be Popeye, Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, the updated version of Elsie the Cow, Linus the Lionhearted, and Underdog. 1967 would see no new introductions to the parade, with the returning balloons being Popeye, Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, the updated Elsie the Cow, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Superman, and Smokey Bear. 1968 would introduce us to the first Snoopy balloon with Snoopy the Aviator. Now, Snoopy is the #1 featured character in the history of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, with a total of 43 separate appearances over a number of different balloon designs. 1968 would also see the returning appearances of Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Superman, and Smokey Bear. 1969 would see a redesign of Snoopy's balloon, now titled Snoopy the Astronaut, and he would again be joined by Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Superman, and Smokey Bear. 1970 saw no new introductions, with the returning balloons being Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Superman, Smokey Bear, and Snoopy the Astronaut. 1971 featured 2 new balloons with Smile and Mickey Mouse, with returning balloons being Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, and Snoopy the Astronaut. 1971 would be a milestone year for the parade, but not in a good way, because all of the balloons would actually have to be grounded that year because of the heavy rain and winds that were happening. 1972 would introduce us to no new balloons, with the returning balloons being Happy Dragon, Donald Duck, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, Smile, and Mickey Mouse. Similarly, 1973 would have no new introductions, but would only have the returning balloons Happy Dragon, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, and Mickey Mouse. And would you look at that, 1974 also has no new balloons to introduce, and the same returning balloons as the year before, with again Happy Dragon, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, and Mickey Mouse. In 1975, we'd finally catch a break and get a new balloon introduced with Weeble, which was joined by the returning balloons Happy Dragon, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, and Mickey Mouse. But with 1976, we would again fall back into no new balloons, with the returning balloons being Happy Dragon, Dino the Dinosaur, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, Mickey Mouse, and Weeble. In 1977, Kermit the Frog is going to be the last new balloon that would be introduced for the decade. He would be joined in 1977 by Happy Dragon, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, and Mickey Mouse. 1978 would see Kermit join the returning balloons, which also included Happy Dragon, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Aviator, Mickey Mouse, and Weeble. We finish out the 70s with 1979, no new balloons, and a smaller returning balloon lineup with Happy Dragon, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Astronaut, Mickey Mouse, and Kermit the Frog. In the year 1980, we get introduced to the newest balloon version of Superman, definitely an improvement. Then have the returning balloons Happy Dragon, Linus Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Aviator, Mickey Mouse, and Kermit the Frog. Though 1981 did not introduce any new balloons, it did introduce a new balloon manufacturer with Kemp Balloons Incorporated, and they would work with Macy's from 1981 until 1983. The returning balloons that year were Happy Dragon, Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Smokey Bear, Snoopy the Aviator, Mickey Mouse, Kermit the Frog, and Superman. But in 1982, we do get two new balloons with Woody the Woodpecker, which does hold the record as the widest balloon at 45 feet, and Olive Oil. The returning balloons this year were Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Snoopy the Aviator, Mickey Mouse, Kermit the Frog, and Superman. Yogi Bear was the only new balloon introduced in the year 1983. He was accompanied by Linus the Lionhearted, Underdog, Mickey Mouse, Kermit the Frog, Superman, Olive Oil, and Woody Woodpecker. In 1984, Raven Aerostar took over the production of the balloons for the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, and that year 2 new balloons would be featured, the Garfield balloon and the Raggedy Ann balloon. The returning balloons that year were Donald Duck, Underdog, Kermit the Frog, Superman, Olive Oil, Woody Woodpecker, and Yogi Bear. Only one new balloon was introduced in 1985, and that was the Betty Boop balloon. And the returning balloons that year were Snoopy the Aviator, Kermit the Frog, Superman, Olive Oil, Woody Woodpecker, Yogi Bear, Garfield, and Raggedy Ann. 1986 had 3 new balloons with Humpty Dumpty, Olive Oil and Sweet Pea, and Baby Shamu. The returning balloons this year were Kermit the Frog, Superman, Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Raggedy Ann, and Betty Boop. During the parade that year, Raggedy Ann would hit a lamppost, snapping the light off of the pole, smashing it to the ground. Luckily, during the incident, nobody was hurt. 1987 would see 4 new balloons introduced with Spider-Man, Skater Snoopy, the Snuggle Bear, and Ronald McDonald, who would go on to be the second most featured character in the entire history of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade with 31 parade appearances. The returning balloons this year would be Kermit the Frog, Superman, Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Betty Boop, and Baby Shamu. In 1988, Big Bird would join the scene, as well as the Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, and an updated version of Skater Snoopy, this time with Woodstock. The returning balloons this year would be Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Baby Shamu, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, and Snuggle Bear. Let me make it to a special year for me personally, 1989, the year I was born. That year, the only new balloon introduced was Bugs Bunny. The returning balloons that year were Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, and Snoopy and Woodstock. We finally made it to the 1990s, and with 1990 we saw the introduction of 3 new balloons: Clifford, the Big Red Dog, Bart Simpson, and Paddington. 1990s returning balloons were Kermit the Frog, Woody Woodpecker, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, and Bugs Bunny. 1991 gave us 1 new balloon with Babar, and the returning balloons that year were Happy Dragon, Linus the Lionhearted, Kermit the Frog, Woody Woodpecker, Raggedy Ann, Betty Boop, Spider-Man, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, Bugs Bunny, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Bart Simpson, and Paddington. This would be the most giant balloons featured in one parade. 1992 has Goofy dressed as Santa Claus featured as the only new balloon. I love his stance on this, very kind of like Michael Jackson-y. The returning balloons this year were Happy Dragon, Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Betty Boop, Spider-Man, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, Bugs Bunny, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Bart Simpson, Babar, and Paddington. 1993 would see the introduction of the first ever video game character as a giant balloon at the parade, with Sonic the Hedgehog coming in. He was joined by 3 additional new balloons: Beethoven, Rex, and Izzy, who was a mascot of the Olympic Games. The returning balloons of 1993 were Smokey Bear, Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Rabbit, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, Clifford the Big Red Dog, and Bart Simpson. During this year's parade, there would be an incident with Sonic the Hedgehog where he would lose a spike and his left arm would get a hole in it, causing him to crash into a lamppost. The incident would injure both a 10-year-old girl and an off-duty police officer, and the helium that was released into the air was so overwhelming that it did lead at least 1 additional person to need medical attention. The year 1994, we would get introduced to 2 new balloons: Barney the Dinosaur and the Cat in the Hat. The returning balloons that year would be Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Snuggle Bear, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Bart Simpson, Beethoven, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Izzy. In 1995, the new balloons that were introduced were Dudley the Dragon and Sky Dancer, with both Eben Bear, which was a redesign of the Snuggle Bear, and a redesign of Izzy with his nose and updated face also featured. The returning balloons that were unaltered this year were Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Betty Boop, Spider-Man, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, the Pink Panther, Snoopy and Woodstock, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Bart Simpson, Beethoven, Sonic the Hedgehog, Barney, and the Cat in the Hat. 1996 would see 2 new balloons introduced, with Jay Ward's Rocky and Bullwinkle and Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit. The returning balloons this year were Woody Woodpecker, Garfield, Betty Boop, Spider-Man, Big Bird, Quick Rabbit, the Pink Panther, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Sonic the Hedgehog, Barney, the Cat in the Hat, and Sky Dancer. In 1997, we were introduced to 4 new balloons: Arthur, the Rugrats, Bumpy, and Petula Pig. Now, 1997 was a big year for the parade, but not in the ways you would hope. Multiple balloons had incidents, including the Pink Panther. The collapsing balloon almost suffocated a mother and daughter. Barney had a big blowout this year as well, but unfortunately the worst thing that happened was caused by the Cat in the Hat. It ended up snapping a 100-pound light fixture off of its pole, and unlike in the past when this one fell into the crowd, it did hit people. It injured 4 people in total, most notably a woman named Kathleen Corona, who ended up in almost a month-long coma. Eventually, she would sue Macy's for $3.5 million, and the case would eventually go on to be settled outside of court. This year would lead to a whole big overhaul when it comes to the safety training of the people who would handle the balloons. Now, compared to all that, 1998 really had nothing big going on. We did introduce 3 new balloons with Babe, Maurice Sendak's Wild Thing, and Dexter from Dexter's Laboratory. The returning balloons this year would be Garfield, Spider-Man, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, Barney, Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit, Arthur, and Rugrats. The year 1999, we were getting right up to the new millennium. People were freaking out about Y2K. It didn't stop us, though, from celebrating Thanksgiving with one of the new balloons that would be introduced, the Millennium Snoopy. He would be joined by Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee and Blue from Blue's Clues. The returning balloons this year would be Garfield, Big Bird, Quick Bunny, Barney, Jay Ward's Rocky and Bullwinkle, Arthur, the Rugrats, Petula Pig, Maurice and Dax's Wild Thing, and Dexter's Lab. We would be introduced to 4 new balloons and 1 additional with a slight redesign. The first new balloon was band leader Mickey, then Cassie from the cartoon Dragon Tales, a new version of Ronald McDonald, and one of the strangest characters to ever appear in the parade, Jeeves from Ask Jeeves. We would also see a special version of the Rugrats with Tommy wearing a beret to promote the new movie Rugrats in Paris. The other returning balloons this year would be Big Bird, Clifford the Big Red Dog, Barney, Jay Ward's Rocky and Bullwinkle, though Bullwinkle did have to fly solo that year because Rocky accidentally got deflated, Arthur, Dexter's Lab, Millennium Snoopy, Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, and Blue from Blue's Clues. The year 2001 would introduce the new balloons Curious George, a new design for Big Bird, Jimmy Neutron, one of the most random but yet one of my most favorite balloons, the Cheezosaurus Rex from Kraft Macaroni and Cheese commercials, and of course everyone's favorite electric rodent, it's Pikachu! Who, even though he was introduced this late into the parade's history, would go on to become the 4th most featured character in the parade, with 24 separate parade appearances. We would also see an updated version of Buzz the Honey Nut Cheerios Bee, as well as other returning balloons such as Clifford the Big Red Dog, Barney, Arthur, the Rugrats, Millennium Snoopy, Blue's Clues, Jeeves from Ask Jeeves, Ronald McDonald, and Cassie from Dragon Tales. In 2002, we would be introduced to a new version of Kermit the Frog. Charlie Brown would finally make his own appearance in the parade. We would see Mr. Monopoly, and then in maybe one of the most retroactively odd balloons to see, Little Bill, which was from a cartoon that was based on the stories of Bill Cosby. The returning balloons this year would be Clifford the Big Red Dog, Barney, Maurice Sendak's Wild Thing, Blue from Blue's Clues, Jeeve from Ask Jeeves, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu, Big Bird, Jimmy Neutron, and Cheezosaurus Rex. 2003 would get us a brand new version of Barney with Strike Up the Band Barney. We'd also see the introduction of Super Grover and a new version of Garfield. The returning balloons this year would be Clifford the Big Red Dog, Arthur, Maurice Sendak's Wild Thing, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu, Big Bird, Jimmy Neutron, Cheezosaurus Rex, Charlie Brown, Little Bill, Mr. Monopoly, and Kermit the Frog. In 2004, SpongeBob SquarePants would make his first appearance, and the red and yellow M&M would also appear as giant balloons for the first time. They would also be joined by Chicken Little, and a redesign on the Ask Jeeves balloon, where he has darker skin and a new haircut. They would also be joined by other returning balloons Clifford the Big Red Dog, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu, Big Bird, Charlie Brown, Little Bill, Mr. Monopoly, Kermit the Frog, Strike Up the Band Barney, Super Grover, and Garfield. 2005 would see 4 new balloons introduced with Scooby-Doo, Dora the Explorer, Healthy Mr. Potato Head, and JoJo. The returning balloons this year would be Ronald McDonald, Pikachu, Big Bird, Charlie Brown, Strike Up the Band Barney, Super Grover, Garfield, Chicken Little, Red and Yellow M&M, and SpongeBob. 2005 would see another incident where people would be injured in the parade when another lamppost would get crashed into, this time by the red and yellow M&M, and this would lead to the injury of 2 sisters, a 26-year-old and an 11-year-old, both of which were treated and released from the hospital on the same day. 2006 would be the wettest parade in history, getting over 1.7 inches of rain. On the route that year, we would see an 80th anniversary hot air balloon, Snoopy as the flying ace, and Pikachu with a brand new design. The returning balloons this year would be Ronald McDonald, Big Bird, Super Grover, Garfield, Red and Yellow M&M, SpongeBob, Scooby-Doo, Dora the Explorer, Mr. Potato Head, and JoJo. In the year 2007, we would be introduced to 3 new balloons, with Abby Cadabby from Sesame Street, what they call the super cute Hello Kitty, and Shrek. The returning balloons this year would be Ronald McDonald, Kermit the Frog, Scooby-Doo, Dora the Explorer, Mr. Potato Head, JoJo, Snoopy the Flying Ace, and Pikachu. In 2008, we would have a Smurf make its way onto the parade for the first time. He would be joined by Buzz Lightyear and Horton the Elephant from Horton Hears a Who. The returning balloons this year would be Beethoven the Dog, Ronald McDonald, Kermit the Frog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Dora the Explorer, Snoopy, Pikachu, Abby Cadabby, super cute Hello Kitty, and Shrek. 2009 would see 4 new balloons, 3 of which were new versions of already established characters, with Spider-Man getting a second version, Ronald McDonald having his third version, and Sailor Mickey being the 4th version of that character. The only brand new character introduced would be the Pillsbury Doughboy. The returning balloons this year would be Kermit the Frog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Dora the Explorer, Snoopy, the Flying Ace, Pikachu, Abby Cadabby, super cute Hello Kitty, Shrek, the Smurf, Buzz Lightyear, and Horton the Elephant. 2010, we would have 2 new balloons with The Diary of a Wimpy Kid and Po from Kung Fu Panda. A very black and white year of new balloons. The returning balloons this year would be Kermit the Frog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Snoopy the Flying Ace, Pikachu, super cute Hello Kitty, Shrek, the Smurf, Buzz Lightyear, Horton the Elephant, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Sailor Mickey, and the Pillsbury Doughboy. 2011 would have 2 new balloons as well, with Sonic getting a new version and Julius the Monkey. The returning balloons this year would be Kermit the Frog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Snoopy, Pikachu, super cute Hello Kitty, the Smurf, Buzz Lightyear, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Sailor Mickey, Pillsbury Doughboy, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and Kung Fu Panda. In 2012, we would have Papa Smurf come to the parade, as well as a second version of Hello Kitty, this one flying an airplane, which for some reason always seems kind of wrong in New York City. We would also see the first inclusion of Elf on the Shelf. The returning balloons this year were Charlie Brown, Kermit the Frog, SpongeBob SquarePants, Pikachu, Buzz Lightyear, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Sailor Mickey, Pillsbury Doughboy, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Kung Fu Panda, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Julius the Monkey. In 2013, we would get 5 brand new balloons, with the 6th version of Snoopy coming in, this time with Woodstock on his back. We get a new version of SpongeBob with the Santa Claus hat, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, a Wizard of Oz hot air balloon, and an Adventure Time balloon with Finn and Jake. The returning balloons this year would be Pikachu, Buzz Lightyear, Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Sonic the Hedgehog, Julius the Monkey, Hello Kitty, Papa Smurf, and Elf on the Shelf. 2014 would be yet another year of big additions, with 6 new balloons coming in with Thomas the Tank Engine, the Red Power Ranger, an updated version of the Pillsbury Doughboy, a new version of Pikachu, this time wearing a scarf, Eruptor from Skylanders, and my favorite bear of all time, Paddington. The returning balloons this year would be Spider-Man, Ronald McDonald, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Hello Kitty, Papa Smurf, the Elf on the Shelf, Snoopy and Woodstock, SpongeBob SquarePants, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, and Finn and Jake from Adventure Time. 2015 would bring us a new version of Ronald McDonald, a new version of Sinclair's Dino, but also 2 brand new balloons with Red from Angry Birds and Scrat from Ice Age, which I think is just one of the best designed balloons ever. The returning balloons this year would be Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Hello Kitty, Elf on the Shelf, Snoopy and Woodstock, SpongeBob SquarePants, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, Adventure Time, Thomas the Tank Engine, Paddington Bear, the Red Power Ranger, Eruptor from Skylanders, Pikachu, and the Pillsbury Doughboy. 2016 would introduce a brand new balloon for Trolls, but then a redesign for the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and a redesign for Charlie Brown. The returning balloons this year would be Hello Kitty, Elf on the Shelf, SpongeBob SquarePants, Thomas the Tank Engine, Paddington Bear, the Red Power Ranger, Eruptor from Skylanders, Pikachu, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Scrap from Ice Age, Ronald McDonald, Red from Angry Birds, and Sinclair's Dino. 2017 gave us the new balloons Olaf, Jet from the show Super Wings, Chase from Paw Patrol, and Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. The returning balloons this year would be Hello Kitty, Elf on the Shelf, SpongeBob SquarePants, the Red Power Ranger, Pikachu, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Scrap from Ice Age, Ronald McDonald, the Red Angry Bird, Sinclair's Dino, Charlie Brown, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, and Trolls. 2018 would have the coldest temperatures out of any day that has had the parade on it, with the temperature being 19 degrees Fahrenheit, which is negative 7.2 degrees Celsius. Goku is the only new balloon that was introduced that year, and the returning balloons this year were the Elf on the Shelf, SpongeBob SquarePants, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon, the Red Power Ranger, Pikachu, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Ronald McDonald, Sinclair's Dino, Charlie Brown, The Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Trolls, Olaf, Jet from Super Wings, Chase from Paw Patrol, and Dr. Seuss's The Grinch. In the year 2019, we would have a new changeover when it comes to who is producing the balloons, with Macy's Parade Studio, with assistance from Signs and Shapes International, taking over. The new balloons that would be featured this year would be Astronaut Snoopy, the 7th version of the character, Green Eggs and Ham, a new version of SpongeBob, this time with Gary on his back, and a brand new version of Smokey Bear. The returning balloons this year would be Elf on the Shelf, the Red Power Ranger, Pikachu, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Ronald McDonald, Sinclair's Dino, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Trolls, Olaf, Jet from Super Wings, Chase from Paw Patrol, Dr. Seuss's The Grinch, and Goku. Now, because of the pandemic, 2020 would be the first and so far only time that the parade would be held with no spectators, only being able to be viewed from television. The new balloons this year would be Red Titan from Ryan's Toy Review and the Boss Baby. The returning balloons this year would be the Elf on the Shelf, Pikachu, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Ronald McDonald, Sinclair's Dino, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Trolls, Chase from Paw Patrol, Astronaut Snoopy, SpongeBob SquarePants with Gary, and Smokey Bear. We get 4 new balloons in the year 2021. First off, we have Ada Twist Scientist, Grogu from The Mandalorian, the 5th version of Ronald McDonald, and the 4th version of Pikachu, this time joined by Eevee in a Christmas sleigh. The returning balloons this year would be Sonic the Hedgehog, Papa Smurf, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Sinclair's Dino, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Chase from Paw Patrol, Goku, Astronaut Snoopy, SpongeBob SquarePants and Gary, Red Titan from Ryan's Toy Review, the Boss Baby, and Smokey Bear. 2022 would give us 2 redesigns and 2 brand new balloons. First, we'd have a redesign of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, being the 3rd version of the character. We'd have Dino and Baby Dino from Sinclair Oil, this being the 3rd version of that character. We'd also see Bluey introduced to the parade, and Stuart the Minion from the Minions and Despicable Me series. The returning balloons this year would be Papa Smurf, the Pillsbury Doughboy, Chase from Paw Patrol, Goku, Astronaut Snoopy, SpongeBob SquarePants, Red Titan from Ryan's Toy Review, the Boss Baby, Ada Twist Scientist, Grogu, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu and Eevee, and Smokey Bear. And now we get to, at least at the time of this recording, last year's parade with 2023. We would see 5 new balloons introduced that year, with Beagle Scout Snoopy, which is the 8th version of this character, Leo from Netflix, so Adam Sandler showing up, Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, Kung Fu Panda's Po comes in with a new design, and then the 3rd design for the Pillsbury Doughboy also makes its first appearance. The returning balloons this year would be Chase from Paw Patrol, Goku, SpongeBob SquarePants with Gary, Red Titan from Ryan's Toy Review, Grogu, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu and Eevee, the Diary of the Wimpy Kid, Bluey, Dino and Baby Dino, Stuart the Minion, and Smokey Bear. And so that brings us into this year's parade, 2024. These are the 6 balloons that will be introduced this year. We have Minnie Mouse, Marshall from Paw Patrol, Spider-Man with his 3rd version, and in my opinion, the best version of the character so far, a 2nd version of Goku, this time no longer Super Saiyan Blue, Gabby from Gabby's Dollhouse, and Extraordinary Nora and the Elf on the Shelf. The returning balloons this year will be SpongeBob SquarePants with Gary, Ronald McDonald, Pikachu and Eevee, the Diary of a Wimpy Kid, Bluey, Dino and Baby Dino, Stuart the Minion, Beagle Scout Snoopy, Monkey D. Luffy from One Piece, Kung Fu Panda's Po, the Pillsbury Doughboy, and Smokey Bear. And so there you have it, almost 100 years of Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade giant balloons. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you did like the video, go ahead and like it and subscribe to the channel. It really helps out a ton. Plus, you might get to see some future videos that are also going to be on subjects that you'd like to see. I appreciate you stopping by. Hope you have a great Thanksgiving if you're here in the States. If not, hope you have a great Thursday. We'll see you later with the next video. Until then, you take care.